Welcome to another movie plot and enjoy the memories. We open on the planet Morganthus following the last surviving crew member of a crashed spaceship. He doesn't get a name since he won't be around for long and welds himself inside the morgue from a pursuing monster. It doesn't even need to get inside and just uses telekinesis to force bash him against the wall until we freeze frame into the blue planet of Xerxes. Here lives an old oracle and the planet master whose head is a giant light bulb, but he talks just like a regular bloke.
Location?
They receive a transmission about the crashed spaceship from Commander Ilvar, but the oracle warns them that it'll be dangerous. Cherryhead verbatim calls her an old woman and demands that she leaves the room so that he can play with himself. Once he's finished the game, Captain Planet puts together a team of astronauts led by Ilvar and the always strung out Trantor. She isn't the most patient noodle in this soup and powers up the ship before anyone's ready, so the crew all rush to their stations. The technical officer Dameia wraps her arms and legs around her co-worker Ranger to brace for takeoff, but I don't hear any complaining from him. Everyone else manages to find a seat, but nothing's strapped down, so Trantor's reckless departure should get her put on cleanup duty. We give her sympathy because this lady's the sole survivor of her previous crew, but there's some residual crazy in those eyes. To prove it, Trantor deletes the already programmed hyperspeed preset, saying that it's her way or the interstellar highway. They jump across space to the planet Morganthus and the captain's all cocky like, "See, I told you it was faster." But as they near the planet, the ship goes out of control and Trantor needs to manually take the wheel. However, when they enter the atmosphere, she just gives up and says, "Oh well, nothing I can do now, we're going to crash." Everyone braces for impact, and since nobody's harmed, this lady has the nerve to say job done, then leaves it for Ilvar to figure out how we get home. The second in command and first-rate douchebag Baelon asserts his leadership over the crew by crying about it. The main protagonist Cabren keeps it so low-key that you wouldn't know he even matters until he outlives the rest. His lady friend Alluma is the team psychic, but she calls herself psi-sensitive just to be really annoying about it. The final members are the rookie Casa chef named Core and Quuhod, who throws crystal shurikens because space. Fortunately, they crash right beside the other wreckage because it doesn't take them long to walk across the planet to it. They board the Remus and begin searching for survivors, but Quuhod's itchy trigger arm is throwing into anything that moves. Since everyone is dead, they torch the bodies, and for some reason when they split up, the rookie is left alone while everyone else is in pairs. It isn't long before Kos gets followed around by a giant stop-motion alien until he runs into Baelon and Alluma. He didn't get a clear look at it, and they must really hate this kid because once they reconnect with the others, they just ditch him. I think they assume that he'll just be following, but this dude is traumatized, and to add to that, gets scalped to death by a giant insect. Meanwhile, on the quest, they perform an autopsy on a corpse brought back from the Remus, but are unable to learn what killed him. Alluma says she senses a presence on the planet, but if we learned one thing from the Oracle, it's that being smart gets you ignored. They need to account for the missing Remus crew members before they can leave, but their surface scanners have begun malfunctioning. Learning that the cause is a nearby energy source, they suit up and trek across the surface to investigate. They soon discover a large pyramid that Alluma says is the most dead thing she's ever sensed outside of Ilvar, I'm sure. The commander decides to split the crew up for absolutely no reason and climbs the side of the structure with Cabren and Dameia. He exclaims that he's too old for these kinds of missions, then immediately loses his grip and almost dies because he's too old for these kinds of missions. The self-aware climber Ilvar reaches a hole in the structure, and despite the complaining, he insists on entering first. Dameia is a professional climber and Cabren sucks, but Ilvar still belays down into the alien hole first. He peeks inside a smaller opening when a tentacle reaches out, so he slices it off, as our commander ain't going out like that. He's going out with half a dozen of these worm-like aliens attaching themselves and sucking his fluid dry. By the time Cabren descends to check out the commotion, he finds an empty harness, and I guess the worms are full. He climbs back out and they meet the others on top of the pyramid where Baelon just incinerated a human corpse. They hadn't even confirmed if it was a crew member when a pyramid door opens, so Quuhod throws a shuriken, wedging it closed. It shatters his weapon and keeps opening, so the trigger-happy Baelon pre-fires in case anything comes out. As they enter, Quuhod mourns the loss of his weapon and seems grumpy that he now requires a gun to stand guard. The others go looking around while Quuhod hates guns so much that he refuses to wield it and gets stuck outside when the door closes. He's pleased to see the shuriken reassemble itself, but it suddenly attacks him and a piece breaks off inside his wrist. It slides up his arm, so Quuhod chops it off to save his body, but the severed limb picks up another dart and throws it into his chest. Meanwhile, the others are getting anxious when Alluma senses a presence in the pyramid, but Baelon's in charge and he says we stay. Not sure what the point of having a psychic around is, while Dameia goes back to the entrance to check on Quuhod. She discovers his dead body covered with maggots and incinerates it, saying that worms are her biggest fear. When she goes outside to try get in contact with the ship, a single worm survivor grows to gigantic proportions. Dameia isn't able to get through to the captain, so she returns to the rest of the crew but bumps into the giant worm from her nightmares. It strips her down naked and has its way with her, but I'm not sure why as no human worm hybrid gets born. The rest of the crew come across her slimed body and Baelon just immediately torches it before they return to the ship. This dude's also quite crazy though, because while the rest want to leave he says he's no coward and wants to fight the aliens. Speaking of crazy, Core and Ranger discover Trantor firing off the ship's weapons that are made only for use in space. She believes that she's actually fighting off alien attackers, so Core knocks out Ranger from behind so that he can speak with her alone. He says that he's also a survivor of the massacre she was a part of, but Trantor just calls him a liar and runs off with a gun. She goes to fight the imaginary attackers, but a waking Ranger and Core watch on the cameras as she fires her gun in the airlock. Ranger doesn't know who hit him from behind and rushes to save her, but Trantor has already been incinerated beyond recognition. Alluma says that the energy source is what caused them to crash and might prevent their escape, so the crew must return to the pyramid. When they re-enter, Alluma is terrified and says that she can sense something, but Cabren just kisses her, which I'm sure is very reassuring. Ranger tells him not to trust Core because he might have ambushed him, and they venture further inside until reaching some worm tunnels. Baelon is still firing off his gun at moving shadows, so Cabren volunteers to go first just to get away from this psycho. The rest follow down the tunnel until all meeting up at the bottom, where they find an inner chamber containing a more advanced pyramid. As they cross the catwalk connecting it to the outer shell, an alien trips Baelon, so he forces the crew to continue on without him. He remains outside to hunt the psychic creature known as the Morganthus monster, but it likes to toy with its prey first. It plays with Baelon's fears, then when it's had enough tosses him off the catwalk into the abyss below. The monster then targets Ranger, and as they continue through the pyramid he begins arguing with Cabren about who's in charge. He draws his gun when suddenly realizing he's gone too far, but we'll just say Alluma used her pointless powers to calm him down. Now is when the alien really kicks things up a notch as they cross through a triangular doorway and find themselves separated. Ranger is attacked by an evil version of himself and they scuffle a bit before he shoots the imposter in the stomach. It has no effect on the illusion, that fights back with a knife but begins to react strangely when Ranger shoots it some more. He realizes that this is just in his head when noticing there's no organs, which causes the alien-induced hallucination to disappear. Meanwhile, Alluma and Cabren are separated by some space glass, so they try to make their way around. Alluma's greatest fear is confined spaces, which is why she always looks terrified and is the obstacle the alien places before her. She must crawl through a narrow tunnel to reach her boyfriend when cables come alive and wrap around her body. They begin to slowly crush Alluma while she screams for Cabren, but her head explodes before he can make it around in time. Reconvening with Ranger, the two finally reach the center of the structure where the traitor Core waits to greet the arrivals. Cabren ascends while Ranger decides to sit this one out and remains downstairs, where we never see him again. Core meditates in the center of the pyramid and reveals that he's actually the glowy-headed planet master who sent them here. He explains that the pyramid is a training device for his ancient species to learn to control fear, and the crew were just his training dummies. All they had to do was be brave like Ranger and Cabren, who shoots at Core in anger, but his force field repels the lasers. Core puts him through a gauntlet of the various monsters who killed his friends, including the giant Acosta, the suction worms, and the large insect. He fights them all off before the light switches from red to blue and the monsters switch to visions of his dead friends. They all attack Cabren, who holds his own until Quuhod, with his strange fighting style, manages to knock his friend unconscious. The rest swarm him, but when Cabren wakes moments later he finds Alluma standing over him looking like her usual self. They go in for a kiss when she begins strangling him, so Cabren pushes her away and is forced to shoot the woman that he loves. He then returns to Core at the core and for whatever reason possesses the ability to shoot beams of energy from his body. Cabren then finishes the ancient being off, but is transferred his power like Santa Claus, making him the new planet master. And the movie ends.